This episode of GatherGeeks is sponsored by BrandLive. Virtual shouldn't mean second rate. Your special events deserve a special stage, no matter the format. BrandLive has supported thousands of events, huge stars, millions of guests, and the President of the United States. Make your whole team happy. Give presenters confidence, blow your audience away, and nail that run of show. With dedicated event support and the tools you need to be an event superhero. Visit brandlive.com to learn more.
Are you
and 9, 8.
Okay, so we're gonna be at
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here's your host, BizBash chairman and founder, David Adler.
Welcome to this special Connect DC live version of GatherGeeks. Today we're going to conduct a little bit of a focus group with representatives from George Washington University and local Washington, D.C. school systems, from students, a great professor, and a lot of people that know what's going on. We're going to hear from Professor Stuart Levy, who has nearly 2 decades of experience in management, teaching, consulting, and research. His background also includes a consulting stint at PricewaterhouseCoopers, global hospitality and leisure practice, as well as management positions in tour operations and internet marketing. He teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in digital marketing, entrepreneurship, customer experience management, hospitality and event management, and tourism planning and development. He has brought with him Bella Day and Gwen Loeber, who are students. Bella is a junior at George Washington University, majoring in business with a double concentration in event management and marketing. Gwen is a senior in GW Business, focusing on event management. Throughout her college time, she has worked with various event groups, including one of the largest student-run TEDx events in the country called TEDx Foggy Bottom. From the high school world, we have Latoya Lewis, who is the executive director of EnventU, who has birthed and run that organization for the past 6 years. And she has been an inspiration for me since as I have been the chairman of this organization. More on EnventU coming up. We also have Brittany H. Anderson, Coordinator, Academy of Hospitality and Tourism at the Frank W. Ballou Senior High School, which was EnventU's pilot high school program. So let's start in. So I want to first start with our students, Bella and Gwen. What is it like being in college almost 2 years into the pandemic? You just came back this year, right? Mm-hmm. Did you learn anything? Was it a crazy thing? Are you blaming the world for how everything is all screwed up? What's been the benefits and the challenges of this?
I can start. A huge benefit from the pandemic is that I got a lot of time with my family, and you really just got to appreciate being together and being safe. But a huge challenge now is that...
Wait, isn't that too much time with your family too? I remember mine, it was too much time.
For me, yeah.
I really liked family walks. But a huge challenge was, as a GW students, we were online for all of last year and then finally came back. And so adjusting to going in person and scheduling out your day instead of just waking up and opening up your computer is definitely a huge challenge to adjust to.
Yeah. I also found that it gave me some time to just have for myself, and it fell in my college career at a very weird time, one where it was right at the end of my sophomore year, beginning of my junior year, and we're sort of just sent home and everything stopped, and I was like, wow.
When did it become not a vacation? When did it become oh my God, this is not going to end?
When classes went online, I was like, I'm not quite sure what to do next, but it gave me some time to think about what I really wanted for my future, and it fell at a good time for me. I learned a lot.
And did you run the TEDx thing during that?
I did. I was actually the director during the spring of 2020, so I was managing it happened in April of 2020, and I managed the transition.
So you had the holy crap moment.
Yeah, I had all of that, and I had never experienced anything, obviously, like that. So there was a lot of denial in it. It was maybe it can still happen, and then it hit the point where it was okay, let's get down to business.
Well, how did you do that? You obviously had to use some of your leadership skill.
Yes, me and the 4 other people on the director board, we had to sit down and contact all of our vendors, the venue, the speakers, first cancel things. We ended up canceling the event and then in the following October doing a virtual version. So we're able to transfer all of that, speakers, all of that to a virtual space. And
Attendance, I assume, because nobody
yeah, we had great attendance, and we had some trouble with our virtual platform, but
we're all learning,
yeah,
they're all learning
definitely.
at the same time.
And there's a lot of grace that's been given with that, which is nice. From attendees especially, and speakers too, they're very understanding.
How many times did you have to say you're on mute?
A couple. But yeah, it was a good experience. I learned a lot from it.
And how is it coming back to school? How did you learn how to interact with students again? Because this is part of our business now. How do you move from that? We're going to talk about this. How do you move from being isolated to like having physical connection?
I've actually found it being very open, and people are very willing, and they want to communicate with you and they want to connect with you. And that's what I find is so interesting with doing events now, is people are craving that connection. And I especially find with the college students coming in who are freshmen and sophomores now, they went from high school straight into pandemic life to nothing. And they're very like craving those in-person experiences, and it's like a joy to work with.
Are we living on false enthusiasm right now that it's going to go back to I don't care
I
again?
don't think so. I
No,
think
you
it's
think
very
that this
realistic.
is
Yeah.
realistic and it's going to stay this way for a while?
Yeah, and understanding that the like virtual space is here to stay, and the flexibility that comes with that is like a kind of a refreshing lens on.
So it doesn't scare you at all as the next generation. You guys are ready for it. Let's move on to high school. Brittany works in a high school.
Yes.
And this is the first time students were back, and we're seeing how they're acting, what kind of events they're doing, and how will those events translate into our future events.
Yes.
What are you seeing? You talked a little bit about the kind of events you did during the pandemic that will translate and will live, which will be models for how we do it at hotels and things like that.
So from our lens, I will say our high school scholars lost 2 years of school, so thinking about middle school. So when our students came in, they were not high school students or 8th graders. They were actually 6th graders and 7th. So we had to really transform the way that we think, because we are normally catering to the teenager or the well-rounded teen, where these students have been at home for months. And so we had to think, how do we creatively have fun? And really, that's really all we could think about, was how do we have fun? We could not think about benchmarks. We could not think about testing. We really had to think about, how do we make our students feel comfortable coming back into the building? So we started to host pull-up events literally as soon as, I want to say, August of 2020.
So I love that name, a pull-up event.
pull-up.
I've heard drive-ins, I've heard that, I
Yes.
have not heard pull-ups.
Yes,
Has
so
anyone
it's a
heard pull-up
pull-up.
events? It's a good thing. All the hotels
So
should steal this idea.
The teens call it a kickback. Like, kickbacks are when you have a little party at someone's house and you're just watching movies or Netflix and things. So the pull-up was the outdoors kickback. And we had vendors. It would literally be in a parking lot, and we did this for the entire year, all the way up until we went back in the winter months. And we saw that the students actually looked forward to the pull-up. And it was monthly, so they looked forward to the theme. What were we celebrating? What food were we going to have? What activities and resources would be available? And with that type of experience, we also noticed that our students, just as you said, that they miss that human interaction. They miss being able to interact with each other, and not just teens, but adults as well. And it's sad because we don't do it anymore.
Do you think that stuff's going to have a rebirth? Somebody will say, hey, oh my God, we did this during the pandemic. Why don't we continue it?
Well, I as the events coordinator of the entire school, I'm bringing it back. We had to get them back into the building and acclimated, of course. But for the holidays, I want to do a bazaar. So we're going to do like an outdoors Christmas bazaar, because another thing, we cannot invite families into the building. Our parents, or everything that relates to families, is still virtual. So back to school night was virtual. Parent-teacher conferences are virtual. So we still don't get to see our parents. And our parents are such key players when we talk about our scholars going through the industry and learning about hospitality as a CTE coordinator.
I wasn't aware that do all high schools have an event coordinator that actually do the events? That's like the gateway for, I've never.
Absolutely not.
No?
Yes, there are only 4 hospitality academies in the district.
Yeah.
So there's only 4 schools that actually have the certification program into hospitality. And yeah, so the 4 of us, we are, of course, because of our passions, we're just deemed as the school's coordinator for our event.
Do you think that's an innovation that all schools should have?
Yes.
Well, I have to.
Oh, let's go.
share a little
Okay,
bit.
talk
Just
about
because-
EnventU too.
No, just because the Academy, Ballou, and EnventU, we came up together.
Explain what EnventU is, because no one understands what the hell it is.
Oh my goodness. So EnventU is a nonprofit that focuses and targets high school students to teach them the different career paths available within the event industry. So that's my background. I'm an event professional, and when I was in high school, I had no clue about this industry. And a lot of my professionals I spoke to say they fell into the industry. So we want to bridge that gap, and we want to capture students at a younger age to whether if they make it to college, great, but if they don't, that we're still adopting a trade school type model to where we foster their talent and put them on a successful path for careers. And as we all know, our industry is ripe with opportunity. And when we went to Ballou, the Academy of Hospitality at Ballou is the same age, I believe, as EnventU. Yeah. So we came up together. When you say, oh, we're all high schools doing this? No, they're not. And that's part of our mission, is to bring it to high schools. And you and I talk about this, David. But I do want to just piggyback on what Brittany said when she said that the focus was to have fun. I think as adults, we forget that sometimes, that the whole point was to get the kids in the mental space to where they could receive the education. They couldn't lead with the education. They had to first acclimate them to just being back together. And I think that is a great lesson for us as adults, is to, as we're, coming back, let's have fun.
The thing is, though, the have fun is what we're all dealing with. Engagement. We call it engagement
yes,
now.
exactly.
But it's not a four-letter word.
Yeah.
Fun. And what do you do to make it so that, what kind of engagement tools are you doing that allow, I believe that all event organizers, as I said yesterday, need to be collaboration artists. They need to get the girls to dance with the boys at the high school dance, the junior high school dance. And so what do you do to make that happen, to engage people in high school? What are some of the things you do?
I will say the first thing, we're just going to state the obvious, that social media has carried us the entire pandemic, TikTok or Instagram. And I will say at the start, we did not even have a social media account. So we did not have an Instagram or Twitter. My academy did, and I ran that just so I can expose our scholars and things, but the school body did not. So I took that on. And as an educator, you realize that you take on everything when you are doing a pandemic. My title has changed a ton of times. But I will say social media and that engagement let our scholars know that we understand platforms. And so even if you might not use TikTok, just understanding the social platforms and the value that it brings, right, especially to our industry, because it is all about communication and getting the message out there.
Right. We're going to have a whole conversation on platforms, but I want Stuart to talk first. Because we're both the old guys here. He's much older than he is. And he has been teaching this. But what have you learned from teaching this over especially the last year? It's been incredible how it's changed.
It sure has. I'm just trying to stay a step ahead in a number of ways.
I think we all are.
With our students, right?
With everybody.
So I've been teaching online for the last 3 semesters.
You hate it?
I really hated it at the beginning, loved it for a good almost year. And now it's a little bit back to the grind again. Next semester, we'll all be back in person, all of the classes. But I think a lot of what we're learning now is going to transfer into the on-campus classes, the live classes. And we're all talking about hybrid. And in fact, in one of the event management classes, students are working on developing a hybrid event. So some of the things that I do, and to take off on the idea of fun and engagement, we use tools.
She's
and you can
the,
tell
she's the Kahoot queen.
the Kahoot. She's
Wait,
won
what does that mean?
Kahoot
Tools.
3 times. Do you all know Kahoot?
4 times. Yeah.
Tell us what Kahoot is. There's only like a couple of hands going on.
So Kahoot is a terrific tool that I use to reinforce material preparation for class. Bella and Gwen have both been winners. Bella's won so many times I can't count anymore. Anyhow, it's basically a trivia game. It's a gamified experience that you get points for answering the right question and as quickly as possible. And we make it as fun as we can online. There's a podium at the end. Bella's on top of the gold medal, and she doesn't have to do the homework for the following week. So there's a prize for that. So Kahoot's a great way to get people involved. And now I'm thinking
This is on digital. This is our digital
this is
thing.
online, but all of this can be brought in person. So I'm now trying to figure out the next step online. How do we bring in Kahoot? How do we bring in Mural?
No? Okay.
Yep, so that's another collaboration tool that we use for, let's say we're looking at stakeholder mapping and can all come together and use sticky notes like you would in a live session, and you're able to then vote on the most popular. So there's a number of different, what I'm doing is using a number of tools that are out there in the digital space, applying it to class to keep the level of engagement as high as possible. Another thing that we're doing, because when we're teaching, let's stay with event management for a second, we're teaching the domains, right? So everything from project management and utilizing the tools, event design with social tables, but we're also, and Bella and Gwen can say whether it's successful or not, maybe a little bit here and there, but focusing more on the soft skills as well, not just the technical skills, but how to manage conflict, how to lead teams, how to talk about innovation and change, and we role play in class. So again, as much as we can, remember that. I think you, I don't know if you volunteered or not, but you.
I did it nonetheless.
So the idea, all of these things that we're doing is to maintain that level of energy online, which now, back in person, how do we maintain?
So it's been a huge laboratory to increase in person.
And I think so much of this, because I consider teaching class to basically, I host 5 events a week.
Yeah.
All right, they're just 75-minute events. So how can this all be brought in to not only to connect with classmates, so the networking component of events, but also the education. And I think that's the next step for events, is to really enhance the education through engagement.
So I during the pandemic, a lot of CEOs, I think I said this yesterday, were actually being called by the C-suite people, because the event people were the ones that ran the Underground Railroad. They knew the customers, and they also knew the employees. And now, going to work, people are reporting that people are going 3 days a week. They need to be engaged at the office as much as at an event. So it's the same thing. So it seems like a lot of the same skills are happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're hiring. It's so funny. I interviewed David Tutera. I don't know who if anybody heard of him. He does a lot of big event stuff. And he was saying he was just hired to do a huge company's welcome back employee event, because he's a wedding guy. They wanted the feeling of the wedding. So all of these disciplines are merging together. Have you seen, when you teach professional B2B type of stuff, that it does enhance social and things like that? Or you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the more that we can bring in from the social gatherings, because it's not just I go to an event and I check off, I've networked, I've learned, I've had my one-on-one appointments, but it's the emotional experience.
Yeah.
So how we're capturing that. Another thing that we do, in a number of my classes and study abroad classes as well, is we evaluate the customer journey and customer experience. We use mystery shopping, we use online review analysis in the midst of this right now. And this can be for hotel stays, it can be for destinations. We've been down in the Bahamas evaluating the visitor experience. So we look at what are the pain points and how to manage those, how to make those surprise and delight moments. So all of this from the customer perspective, and then now we're integrating online experiences.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor, BrandLive. There are so many virtual events platforms out there. Which one is right for you? How about the one that makes planning your next super important, stress-inducing, virtual event easy, or even fun? Since 2010, BrandLive has supported thousands of events, millions of guests, and huge stars, including the President of the United States. With dedicated event support and the tools you need to be an event superhero. Visit brandlive.com to learn more.
Is this from what's the deliverable when you do this? Is the class does this? What's your project?
We have a paper where we have all these types of tables and stuff that we filled out. Our project for hospitality management is doing like a mystery shopping experience of a restaurant. So we're going, evaluating the experience, and using all these tables and metrics to, evaluate it and see how we would improve on it. And
shouldn't everybody in this room who works in hotels be doing their own mystery things, I would assume?
Many do.
And what have you discovered is the biggest problem that you've seen in your short careers? Have you?
I think it is seeing that outside perspective, because I think when you're planning it or you're running a show or something like that, it's hard to step back and see from that customer perspective or the attendee perspective to be able to see that. But these gives you a new sort of lens to look at it, and it's very.
You're doing all these interesting class experiences. When you go out into the real world, are you seeing us doing that, or should we be doing it? Are we falling behind in outside your classroom? You can be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say so.
What do you think that we're missing? We're hearing these great theoretical, and practical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not doing a lot of that stuff.
I'll let Brittany chime in as well, but I come from our industry and being an event professional first, and then I transitioned to education. And what I saw was the world of education, and having to appeal to students and engage students, educators are more immersed in the Slidos and the Kahoots, and I heard of that in the world of education. How can we engage these kids? And adults are no different, and that's really the point that I want to get across. Adults are no different in the way we want to engage, in the way we want to learn, and I think we just have been, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but maybe trained better to sit through things. But young people are like, their attention span is, no, I'm not doing this, and they're demanding more, and they should. And I think, my opinion is that we are falling behind because there's so much innovation in the generations behind us that we really need to reach back and put ourselves in a position to receive that and be open to bringing it to what we're receiving now. And I say that with all the love.
I've been preaching, and I'm preaching too much, but that event organizers need to be collaboration artists. And I'm proud to hear that you're saying that actually that's what's happening, and that we need to be able to solve the problems down the street, especially. We got to get people to talk to each other. But what do you think is, when you, after studying this for a few years, what do you consider a successful event? What is success for all of you? For, like, at the end of the time, I hear that's the Maya Angelou thing. It's how they feel. But what really is it now? You need to, especially we've been through this pandemic. People want more.
I could go. I think success is shown through like word of mouth. Like after you get out of the event, if you hear people saying, wow, that was great, I really enjoyed it, or like telling other people about the event they went to, I think that shows it was successful, as long as it's all positive thoughts after it.
Because you can have negative that really destroys it.
Yeah, that won't be good, but I think positive word of mouth after it would show success if I planned an event.
Yeah, for me, it's like that emotional experience, obviously, very descriptor, but when you go to an event, it makes a big impact on you, and that's how I see, whether it be an educational event, or you're going to just like a music event, all of various.
Does it have to have
ones.
Purpose, though? I mean, are we fun,
I think
purpose?
it does, but on sometimes even just social interaction is a success metric, so I think just an emotional impact on the attendees.
How about getting people, young people, you're accused all the time of looking at your screens all the time. How do you get them to put down their screens and be more social? I'm told that you have to give people permission to talk to each other now. Is that true? Yes and no?
I find it a little bit. I definitely think it's a problem.
We've also talked about code switching at lunch. There's a thing called code switching, where we're no longer planning one event. We're planning 3 events at the same time. People are planning their underground texting event, where how many of you have been at an event and you're texting your colleague, this guy is so boring on your text, and then you have your actual being polite in the room with other people, and then you have your social media game where all of a sudden you're like the prince of somewhere. And so you're planning 3 or 4 different things.
And recognizing that is part of just the fabric of an event, and if you give a platform to allow those discussions to be there, they could be perhaps a little bit more constructive of communication between the attendees.
Yep. Are you still learning I'm learning every time I talk to these people.
I was going to take notes from your last question. It's the idea of you're not able to control, and you shouldn't control what attendees are doing.
Well,
That's
we're a bunch of
absolutely
control
fine.
freaks in the event business.
Yeah, but just what Gwen had said, how can we make use of some of the platforms and tools with their cell phone, with their laptop, and all the rest, and engage people? Can you imagine right now if people could be, and maybe they are, leaving notes on this session and having a
These
screen
guys
up,
suck.
right? So the idea of being talked to for any amount of time is hopefully go away, and there'll be other opportunities to interact.
Let's talk platforms.
Not that I don't love this event right now.
Platforms. TikTok, predominant in your worlds, and why, and how do you communicate? You invite people to event with TikTok, or is it like, what about TikTok? 'Cause everyone says, oh, that's just for kids.
I actually know a lot of adults on it, like a lot of my aunts and uncles are on it, but it connects you because if you see something funny, you'll send it to your friend or your relative and be like, oh, gee, this made me think of you. But I think it's really good because it's different than Instagram, because Instagram, like, you do a picture, and if you do, you can put multiple pictures on Instagram, but then you have to swipe, and nobody's gonna like really swipe.
We're
all the
over
way.
swiping. That's too hard now.
But I guess TikTok's convenient because it's a video, and already going on TikTok that you sit and watch each TikTok, whereas Instagram, you don't want to just look at their whole like thing. So like you get to see an inside glance of what's going on, and it feels like you're almost like there, because like I've seen like real estate TikToks where it's obviously I'm in no position to buy a house, but they're giving me a tour of the house, and it's really, like makes me very intrigued and interested, and I'm very engaged in the TikTok because you feel like you're almost like doing the tour of it.
Is it part of the event landscape that we need to pay attention
Yeah.
to?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's a yes if you
Yeah.
can't see the
It
nod.
It is like a raw glimpse of the experience itself, and to be able to have a platform that promotes that in through some crazy algorithm. I'm not sure how that works, but it's like very impressive to be on there, and you get to see a glimpse of something. And
Is it the
it's
intimacy
powerful.
about it? It seems like
think so.
I believe that events are about how do you scale intimacy? How do you make it so that one conversation that you have, you're taking home, and that's changing your life? Instagram does that better than TikTok does that better than an Instagram or a Facebook or God forbid this email thing. Do you ever use that anymore?
I don't know about that.
Do you invite people with emails now to events or no?
I think people for
Professional.
communication, but TikTok, especially for engagement and more of a real understanding of what's happening, gives you a better idea of, if you learn about an event on TikTok, I think you get a much better idea of what you're walking into or what you're signing up for.
Can you sometimes the Fire Festival have a little bit of too much of a sense of what it could be, and then it flops?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I just was going to chime in. I think it's authenticity that is really the craving, and TikTok speaks authenticity.
Yeah.
It doesn't look so packaged. Everything's not so perfect. And I think generations behind are like, they really crave that realness and that authenticity. And so I think that's why TikTok is.
But how about for education? I'm noticing people say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of people dancing." It really isn't. I don't know if you can the pedagogical aspects of it. You learn a lot in 3 seconds. Things like how to use your iPhone better. And,
Actually, a question off
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Do you use TikToks in any of your other?
I know I'm in a consumer behavior class, and we had to make marketing implications, and a lot of other groups made TikToks to advertise for going to like the David Fowler Center in the business school, and they like did a TikTok that introduced all the different employees in that center to help you get to know them and feel comfortable going into them. So like a lot of my classes, like kids have been using it to like display like their projects and stuff.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've not used it in a classroom setting at all.
I've been trying to use it for my presentations, to actually because I think it communicates in piecemeal better than a slide. What? Yeah, how about in the high school? What are we doing?
So in high school, it's definitely the unknown. I will say the difference between Facebook and Instagram is that you choose to follow people. So you know those people or you choose to follow. TikTok has an algorithm where based upon your interests, so you don't know these people, you don't know these experiences. So I will say in high school, it's funny because we started a summer acceleration program to bring our scholars back into the building. And I had, of course, my events team of students, and one of my students actually showed me a TikTok of Coachella. And so I've been able to attend Coachella, but she hasn't. And so she says, "Oh my gosh, Ms. B, look at this. This looks like so much fun. I want to do something like this." So we created Ballou-chella. And so based off of that TikTok, we had a Ballou-chella in the summer, which was an outdoor festival of local artists, local food, t-shirts, arts, and everything. And so just because of that one idea, we were able to produce our own version. So in the classroom, we actually do have a digital marketing class that's a part of our hospitality
In high school, how many had digital marketing classes in high school?
Yes, and we actually teach how to edit and how to create videos or short videos or commercials using TikTok.
One thing about TikTok I noticed is that they have trends,
Yeah.
and then people follow the trends. Is that going to happen in events too? Or are you going to see people want to, rather than having, I want to do it my own way, people are going to want to do things that are popular, like the Instagram moment is going to become a TikTok trend? Could it be? I don't know.
I think
Yeah?
so. You can integrate that into whatever your event that you're doing, and you said make it your own, and you can take that trend and place it in your own space and sort of follow along with that. Get some of
So the
hype
digital
from that.
world and the face-to-face world are actually merging. You're seeing that everywhere. I showed this yesterday, that face-to-face events are a trust accelerator. That when you meet someone face-to-face, you get the warm and fuzzies and you can talk to them, and you can do more digital events. But the digital canvases are going to become more able to use these tools to connect people with augmented reality and spatial computing, and it's going to change everything. So it's not there yet. You can't really reach out and touch somebody in a good way.
Yeah, and David, on what you just said, we'll continue evolving. It may not be TikTok. It'll be the next
Yeah,
thing,
the
and
next-
the next thing, and the next thing. You talked about VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. Then the question becomes, how do we make sure that we attract people to the in-person events and not necessarily just have you stay at home? And those types of events via the internet are going to get better and better. So then I think we talked about this a little bit, what can destinations do? Because that's the real key. When people are at a conference, well, it'll be easier and cheaper and all the rest to stay home. So how can the event world work even more closely with the DMOs, the visitor bureaus, to really create an experience? Because then, and we did this in class, we were talking about place-based, how do you get out of the conference and not just go for the dine-arounds and all the rest, but really continue having that educational, networking, and learning experience outside of the conference. And I think destinations really have a role to play in that. And they can be more innovative, more creative to really make use. And I know in DC, we have so much that we can make use of. And just another point on that, a lot of times when it comes to education, we're focused on technical skills, but as we talk about in class, what are those continued development skills, leadership, management, all of that can be done outside of the conference in the tourism destination.
That's so interesting. Let's end on, I want everybody to give like their last sort of opinions of what the future is going to be. But in terms of tourism, I'm going to ask you, what do people really want from events? Is it learning? Is it like, what is networking? What is the reason people come to events?
I've been to a lot of events in my adult life, a lot of conferences. A lot of it is, and it will continue to be, focused on networking. Education seems to play a bit more of a secondary role. However, and we talked about it before here, about the continued skill building and certifications in just a day or a couple of hours. You can do that at a conference. Mm-hmm. So I think that there'll be opportunities to engage people more meaningfully in education, while at the same time making sure that those events continue to pop from a networking perspective.
Right. Let's go around the horn. What do you think the future holds? How are you feeling about like where you are now in terms of like just a final comment, whatever?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think a big transition and turning point in the events world that makes me excited to join it, and just the core of flexibility with events and how, we've been shaken to the core, and now we're open to anything. Let's try it, let's go for it, and it's a really creative space that promotes human connection, and it's a really awesome industry.
Yeah, I agree with what Gwen said. I think there's a lot of creativity now that we can use, but I do think, obviously we know now that like virtual events do work, but I do not think they will have too much of an impact or have too much of like power over in-person events. Like I think in-person events will definitely continue to trump virtual, and so that's a positive because I'm very excited to get back to like totally normal in-person events with no masks at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's coming. Yeah, so I'm very optimistic, and I think there's a lot of creativity like she was saying, but I do think in-person will totally stay and come back to like where it was before.
Can I just say, you've given me lots of hope for the future, both of you. So I applaud you for. Let's go to high school, and then we'll wrap it up.
One thing I share with my students is that I always tell them to think what's in it for our customers, what's in it for them. And that's what really makes successful events, is that we're not leading with what we think is best, but what we think our audience needs. And that's how I feel. If we continue to lead with the thought of our audience and our end game, then I think events will be even more successful. I'm like the girls on the end. I just really am excited that we get to almost start over, if that makes sense. We get to be a little bit more creative. And there were things that we would shy away from with using Zoom, for example. We wouldn't use Zoom. We're like, what? No, I don't want to do Zoom anymore. But now, even with our conferences, we can incorporate that. That is still a component. So how do we merge technology with human interaction? And that's what I'm excited to share with my students.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say just knowing that it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. Even though virtual events are here, everybody's not going to resonate with virtual. Some people, they don't resonate with in person. They're the person in the back of the room. So I think we're challenged as professionals to really diversify the experience, and now we have more tools to do. And so if we're leading with a diverse experience that can really speak to what the attendees' needs are, I think that we will be on our way, or even more so on our way as an industry. And I'll just say, personally, I'm glad and excited for the permission to have more work-life balance in our lives. We work hard as professionals, and sometimes there's no hours, and people are texting you and calling you all days. And I think now it's people are given permission. You have your out of office off and you mean it. And the weekends are the weekends where they can be. And so as an industry, I would just implore us to keep that. Everybody to keep that. Keep your work-life balance priority and keep that human element as we all thrive in an industry.
This also gives me a lot of hope that these inspirational leaders in the high school world are going to do well. So we got a good future path going with this next generation as well. I just want to thank everybody for coming, to listening to us, to listening in on these kind of conversations. I think that's really fun. I learned so much from it. And I've basically doing GatherGeeks has been a master's program for me to learn what's going on. And so I appreciate everyone here listening in on this conversation. And I hope it gives us a lot of inspiration and hope for the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.